Okay.
So can I share the screen?
Yeah, I will give it to you. And after that, you can. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I lost you.
Hortense, tu es où là? Il y a du soleil encore. C'est dans quel lieu?
I'm on the road.
Yeah.
You're driving.
No, I'm not driving. I come back from the beach.
Wow.
Oh, great.
Nice.
Well, now you can share your screen, Ghazal.
Okay.
You are
Okay. All right. So I share my screen right now, share with you this recording that I did earlier today. And it was the request of the Stephen Spender Prize for Poetry. They wanted people to, certain people to write poetry in their own languages. And so I was there to provide the sound of Persian language to people, and I share that with you. Can you see it? No. Okay.
Hello to the participants.
Hang on. All right.
Stephen Spender Prize. My name is Ghazal Mosadeq. I'm a poet and performer and translator. My mother tongue is Persian. Thank you for involving me in this project of bringing the foreign sound to English speakers, poets, and translators, as it was put to me, making the prize more accessible to entrants that are not so confident with the sound of a language. For this reason, today, I will read 3 poems for you. One is written by myself, 2 poets, 2 of the real poets. The poem that I'm reading is in Ghazal style. It's called Khabushara, and I also share the script of the poem. Khabushara is a Western word that refers to the great empire, Persian Empire. I have an interest in no Persian Empire. You can find the word Khabushara carved in the Cyrus the Great's tomb. Is called Naqsh Rostam, and it's located in Shiraz, the city of Shiraz in Iran. The illuminous mule there on Naqsh Rostam that Cyrus the Great is sitting on. And I just have to say that Naqsh Rostam is very important because it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. That mule says this word, Khabushara, it's carved right there. And that refers to compassion, wisdom, and equality. When I'm reading this poem, I want you to pay attention to the meter of the poem, the rhyme, and the refrain, especially the refrain, bushte, which refers to greatness and glory. This ghazal is full of wordplay and puns and double meanings. I'd be delighted to explain more. If somebody wants to translate this poem, I'd be happy to help them translate, read it again and again. However, you can just repeat this YouTube video as much as you want, but any help that I can do translating this poem, please let me know. Be very happy. Khabushara. سپوغا را میش هوا و میشا جنو شارا گوشته میفیجی را خفشه خاقابا نیرا گوشته لناچیمی سخاقا می سرجا با را بوشتم بی کت رامی جاسی کو با خا ف را بوشته کی باس لیکت سپوغاشی ژرافت را بوشته قرقیسا شامیستا پژ گیتارامی رانی آبوشته بیکت را جامیسی کورا خافه که باسلی کت سپو قاشی ژرافت را گوشته. Hope you liked it. And now I read you from the most famous Persian poet's work, the Sufi master. You all, of course, know him. The most famous Sufi master, Am'aq Bukhara'i, the 12th century writer. And he wrote about women's rights and diversity within Sufi gatherings. I also want to perform the tradition in the way this book is read, because it's almost sacred text. It's very important to pay attention to rituals in which poetry in foreign languages are performed and read. You kiss, text, hold up your head, bring it close to your heart. Take a deep breath. And I've just marked the poem I want to read. همه کسانی که اندکی مطالعه دارند می‌دانند که خوردن مشروبات الکلی احتمال ابتلا به بیماری کبدی یا سرطان کبد را افزایش می‌دهد. ولی خوردن این مشروبات در غرب بسیار شایع بوده و حتی در بعضی خانواده‌ها جزو خوراکی‌های روزانه محسوب می‌شود. آیا اینکه اکثر مردم مشروب می‌خورند باعث می‌شود که خوردن الکل به یک رفتار بی خطر تبدیل شود و منجر به سرطان کبد نشود؟ That was a question. و منجر به سرطان کبد نشود؟ And now I read just a poem by a less known Sufi poet, but I really like his writings, and a friend of mine writes him a lot too. His name is Rumi. You might have heard his book, and here's how. Let me read it again. Kiss, forehead, heart, دلیل دوم طرفداران خودارضایی در عصری که بیماری‌های غیر قابل درمانی مثل ایدز شیوع یافته و روز به روز بر شمار مبتلایان به آن افزوده می شود خود ارضایی یک راه ایمن برای برآوردن نیاز جنسی جوانان بوده و آنها را از خطر ابتلا به این بیماری می‌رهاند. خود ارضایی یک روش ایمن برای ارضای جنسی است. خود ارضایی همچنین از انتقال سایر ویروس‌ها و بیماری‌های مقاربتی که از زن به مرد و از مرد به زن از زن به مرد و از مرد به زن منتقل می‌شوند نیز جلوگیری می‌کند. As you would see later, and if we ever talk about this poem, the poet does not agree. That's the level of sophistication. If the writer does not agree with that statement, but just puts it forward. It's a very complex poem. Hope you liked it. That was it for the performance. That was a performance. I tried to bring to your attention the sound, but not the sound of the Persian poetry per se, the sound of the poetry. That means the poetic experimentation and performance, perhaps to oppose and play with the cultural commodification of cultural and lingual differences. Sometimes I feel emphasis on embracing other cultures can lead to exoticizing other cultures and literatures. When we're about to translate other languages, we have to pay attention to the sound of the language, and the sound of a language contains much more than the sound of the words. The sound includes the aesthetics as well as the politics of the language against the destination language, especially if you're translating to a hegemonic language like English. And you have to pay attention to the nuances of performing the language, how performance of a language is looked at. While we're doing that, the global late capitalist system misses that complexity. We shouldn't. I put some exotic registers in the performance, but I read first, and I showed the script view was a made-up language, so was the script. And then as two Sufi poets, I read from this text. This is a funny text. I found it in Tehran in a newspaper stand somewhere in central Tehran. It says, facts about masturbation. Somebody really against the idea of masturbation wrote it, and it's a real fun read. I think hearing the sound of poetry and the language that poetry is composed in is very important if we are exactly knowing what poem we are translating. I do the same thing. I want to translate. I want to hear how these words are pronounced in the other language, and that really helps. But I also translate phonetically, so I only translate the sound of the language and let go of the syntax and the meaning. But also just hearing the sound of another language is not enough. If we want to hear the sound of a foreign language, we can tune into foreign radios. At the same time, again, we as translators have to be very cautious of not exoticizing another language and poetic practice. My performance, I tried to play with that idea of exoticizing ritual and foreignness. And also I made jokes and disrespected as much as I could my own mother tongue. And see everyone doing that as well. Thank
No,
you
bueno,
very
entonces,
much again.
no hay que hacerse más problemas porque el destino político de un país
So yes, that was
de alguna manera de hacer
Spender.
Ghazal,
Yeah.
can you turn off Guille's microphone because it's overlapping with the,
I don't know how to do that.
or put me as the host and I can do it.
Okay.
Ah, bueno,
I don't know how to do that either.
You can go to participants
Okay.
and if you don't,
Okay, I can actually do that. Who's that?
Guille.
Los medios, las cosas, no se puede escuchar, no se puede hacer nada. No se puede hacer nada.
If you put
yes.
over his microphone on the list. Okay.
Yes.
Now we're okay.
Excellent.
So
all right.
Guille will be banned from this conversation.
Oh, very good.
Well, you were starting to say something new.
Oh, no, nothing. Just to say that this I did it today because Stephen Spender Trust asked certain poets to read 3 poems, one of themselves and 2 of real poet in another language, and I thought that's a good excuse to play with that idea.
Yeah, and while I was hearing to you, I was all time, and I was talking to Carlos, if she joking or is it serious? Because it's great that because I think most of us can understand the language you were reading. You could have said anything, and for us, we would have understood what you were intending us to understand. I mean, you could say this is a poem dedicated to the sea or to the trees or to the birds or to God or whatever, and we'll say, oh yeah, of course. So I like very much.
Playing with the respect that people give, that, you know, it's like you would let someone who's speaking Persian, for instance, off the hook with going like, oh, this is a Sufi poem about feminism and human rights. Like, what Sufi poem is about feminism?
I was trying because I love Sufi poetry. I don't remember. So yeah.
You'd be surprised that the new reading of the Sufism when people, because now Sufism is portrayed as this cool thing that is much better than Islam. This is Sufism, this is esoteric, that's good. So all these new translations, they see all sorts of feminism in the evidence.
Yeah. No, it was very cool. And I was thinking because I like very much this idea of, well, two ideas at first. This idea of putting a language that no one can understand and everyone can imagine whatever. I was thinking in this great book by Juan Luis Martinez, a Chilean poet, which is an artist book, object book, full of visual plays and photographs and some objects even. And there's a page included written in Chinese. And all the people in Chile that study that book talk about the Chinese page, but no one knows what it says. So a friend of ours, Fernando, I think he could read it because he knows a little of Chinese and don't remember what was something really irrelevant. It was like a dictionary or whatever. So and I like very much that you can guide people to think whatever they think. And the other thing that I like very much is this idea of the explanations of the poems. It's very common in a poetry reading that people explain what they're going to read, and it's like trying that people read in only one way the poem that you want to say, or to look things that maybe aren't even in the poem, and you put forward all of it in this performance. It's great. So I like very much to put intention, the explanation, and the poem itself.
Sure, yes.
And anyone want to comment? Carlos or Martin?
Carlos, go on.
If not, I'm just reading another poem.
Hey.
Go ahead. Hi, Carlos.
Hi, how are you? So good to see you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just got in a little bit late, so I missed the very first part of the performance. But I was thinking a lot of things like related with what Felipe just said. I was thinking, for example, in Altazor, in Vicente Huidobro's song, last song, song 7, where like you have like just the sounds is just the important thing, and not the meaning, and it's amazing how, for example, that poem has been read by I think there is a recording of Charles Bernstein reading it and trying to make meaning out of it, and he has his own interpretation. So I was thinking in sound mostly, and compare like with when you deal with different languages, particularly with a language you don't know anything about, and the importance of like sound, and what we can get from it in order to try to make some meaning. And but also, I don't know why, I was thinking about the poetics or the poetry of hoax, or poetry as a hoax. And I think there's some others that like to play with that idea of like building a kind of poetics in a way of a hoax. I don't know what you think of that, and probably later on we can talk a little bit about translation and fidelity and all those concepts. But I don't know. I'm just kind of tossing those ideas there.
Yeah, that's well, this one was hoax for sure. But I agree, there's a lot of room to play with this idea. And also, as I said, putting people in the spot, just, to respect something that they shouldn't really.
And about what Carlos said, I was thinking, well, lots of important writers, at least from Latin America or Spain, have been not only translators, but interpreters in like United Nations or those kind of institutions. I remember Julio Cortázar, I think, was an interpreter, and also José Ángel Valente, and I don't know, and of course people that are not writers, but I like very much that that role of the interpreter between, I don't know, the president of China and the president of Russia, for example. And I always think it's funny because we're putting so much trust in the capacity of that single person to translate correctly between, I don't know, they want to put a nuclear bomb or not. And it depends so much of that person. But I mean, in all kind of situations, we really have to trust the interpreters or the translators.
Felipe today is not in Santiago.
Sorry?
Great point, Felipe. Now, the sound was stopping when you were talking.
Oh,
and
sorry.
you have to repeat everything.
Yeah.
But it was beautiful. Go.
Well, I've been rehearsing all week, so I'm glad you like it.
Have to speak really slowly like that.
I have to speak. No, I was saying that that we put so much trust in the interpreters, in the translators, for really important things. The instructions for building something or a tool or whatever, and we, of course, we kind of forget a little about it when we're reading a poetry translation, for example. But there's also this responsibility and this possibility to make, to play, to put mistakes, intended mistakes or not. How do you see it when or you just prefer not to think about it when you're translating?
When I'm translating, I also do a lot of practice with mistranslation and creative translation. For instance, I can show you the series of talismans that I've been working. I have this, you saw that talismans,
remember,
right?
yeah.
I had this
Yeah, they're
thing
great.
in Chile.
Mm.
So these are texts that I can't really read them. And I try, and it creates lots of possibilities. I show you.
That is. So if you want to plug it in.
And they're also visually really interesting. It's like texts like this.
Beautiful.
That are not very, they're like mixture of Persian and all different obscure languages and signs. And so I try to translate them into English. And these texts are not poetry. I try to translate poetry out of them. So yes, this the idea of mistranslation exists there.
Yep. And that I love that moment when you like connect that kind of ritual with trance, and in the word translation I heard also trance, you know, like how you connect from different language and you talk about it from one language to another in the same like kind of, I don't know, ritual or respiration of mystical, I don't know how do you feel the connection of your body, of your spirit and your soul when you're performing?
Was when I was performing this one, I
just like how about your, because I saw your really like the importance that you've made in the moment of like the connection of the book with your front, with your mouth, with
that was just I was like exoticizing it as much as I could, so I was just trying to treat the text as something sacred. And but you mean a connection of that and the reading?
Yeah,
that's just the
following the idea, you know, the idea of trance, of the word translation, that like changing trance, an S with a CE, like the how you can put our one spirit in another body, or one spirit, the connection of your thoughts with your body in a way, when you are the same as language, you know, how you can translate a poem. You can follow the body, or you can follow the soul, or you can follow the spirit, you know, that is what that I mean. I don't know if I explained me. I'm a little bit like tired to that, but anyway.
I completely got it. In that terms, the translation was the translation into acting. So it was what the message that I wanted to give by reading these texts, and you know, the comedy that I wanted to perform with it was through acting rather than reading, because the text that I was reading was not a Sufi text, was a very silly text. And and also those books that I showed, they like looked elaborate and looked like they're wrong. It's like that the first I said, well, Agha Bukhari is such a huge Persian poet. Nobody really knows Agha Bukhari. He existed. And so the book that I showed was Hafiz, that is pretty much known as a Persian Sufi poet. And the other one that I said, well, nobody knows Rumi. Well, of course, that was like a play with the popularity of Rumi. And then I showed the text, which was a folk tale, a book of folk tale. And so none of the books were also the ones that the scripts that I showed were wrong, and then the texts were also something else. Just sounded really Persian, though the first one wasn't even Persian.
And what kind of a
so in terms of translation, yes, it was more like translating culture into Africa. Pardon me?
Yeah, what kind of reaction have you received from people in Iran or the Persian culture? They have they know your work, or they criticize, or they laugh at it, this kind of work?
In Iran, I'm not that much known basically anywhere over here or
here. You're very
Iran,
well known.
Here I am. Okay.
Chile,
well, I wish
you left that impression with me.
I respect that. Tarane, I really want you to listen carefully. No, I haven't done a performance like this over there, and this one was more of a reaction to because there were several invitations from me to be in an event and be the Persian and enrich the English language by the ancient sounds of Persian, as if I care for English language or Persian. So I thought I should just do something.
Great.
So
I have a question about translation, because I always wonder about translation. Like, is that's the role of the artist or the poet or the person to translate from one realm to another realm? So even poems that are written in our own language are read in another language, because poetry is its own language. So I'm curious about, like, when the poem is the other language, even if it's a language that you speak in. So there's the sense of what translation means, the translation of the ear and of the senses, and as Martine said, as of the body, and how we are translating our perception, translating the sensory world, and how poetry does that, or art does that. And I wonder about, like, our role as people or human beings between areas, between realms of, where our idea comes from, and now we're sharing it with the world, and that becomes a translation.
Oh, in terms of just even expressing an idea as a kind of translation of an idea into words, you mean?
Yes. Expression becomes a translation. Expression, the translation of the inner self in a way. And that's at its core, that's maybe redefining what translation is, but that's in a way what poetry or art brings out.
Yes, it's a translation of an experience. One very interesting word that I found in Persian dictionary, the old word for autobiography was tarjuman ahval. Tarjuman is translation, and ahval is like feelings and beings. So it's interesting that autobiography was known as translation of self. So I think it's close to what she said. The next poem that I'm going to read, and I read it quickly so we can get to the Reese and I'm going to perform something. He's actually against translation. It's a text that I wrote on bilingually, but when I'm reading it, you have to know that the Persian and English inside this text are not translations of each other, as they might look like they are. I can put, just a second, I can just show you the text. There's, this is also coming from that practice of, oh, I was just ending the meeting. No, how you share? Is it sharing now? No. Okay. This is what I'm going to read. It's called Darman Daryozadegi, Supernatural Remedies for Fatal Seasickness, highly indivisible, but nevertheless in 19 sections. Aleph. Your name is Jeffrey. You're traveling by car when you know there are obvious benefits to bike, but the fuss starts neither on the bike, nor on the car. That starts when you need to take the ferry over the channel. The fuss involves sensing nausea, vomiting, pallor, sweating, headache, dizziness, malaise, increased salivation, apathy, drowsiness, belching, hyperventilation, stomach awareness. All you need to know is every living being is affected by seasickness, different degrees. Jeffrey, assimilate yourself with Kaz Kaval Var, apostrophe S, Khozabalat, medical practice of Khozabal, collect hearsay, but avoid judgmental shortcuts. همه چیز هرچند خوزعبل خاص نیست. اگر به معنی واقعی سرگیجه به سراغ کسی بیاید، به نظر می رسد که مفاهیم از معنا تهی شدند و همه چیز به طرز غریبی علمی است. باید توجه داشت، اینها ساخته ذهن است همه. Are you thinking about a bicycle versus car, Jeffrey? Are you thinking about train versus boat? Pick your poison, railway versus maritime. If the former, you need to be me, to be sitting in a car and feeling bad about everything. If the latter, read Rafuli, Ginger Root, and Z Horizon 191995, Living Quarters, Performance, Art at Sea, Journals of Dardهای مرگزا 85-16298-209-635, Hallucination as Hypnothesis Record, C 2000 and today, AP overexerting when at sea, the Theophany measures, stretching of extraocular muscle, figure 1. آقای جفری dash 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 دریا dash 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 slash dash 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 8 مشهد گوش داخلی A B جیم 2222 گ تکم slash 111 میم. Let's say you feel a visual disorientation and you're about to lose balance as if on a catamaran on a wavy sea. Figure 1. I warn you, reading can be just as hazardous. Footnote number 1. You can feel at sea by this or any text. It's important to know that text lines contain a history of getting rocky at bay at times. Avoid letter word confusion. Focus only on remedies. Footnote number 2. Seasickness can be short for single European act sickness. Fiction, focus only on remedies, not causes. Think of vegetable 6 in the chart, then boil a bukhur. If the filaments are twisted and tangled, reproduce the sound of the certain times 550 meme rocking seasickness 17785/SDOID at O/oud. Let boil, be generous with zaman. I skip this part into prohibition and paranesis. Now you've started to quiver. Don't look down. Don't read anything. Don't think about your drunk father. Don't hold your head down. Don't think you're a target. You've always been. Don't cuddle your bag. Don't think a bullet is coming straight to your forehead. Don't ask the driver the question you ache to ask. Don't moan. No, don't moan. Don't smile. Don't try to smile. Don't look at what appears to you as snow goose flying in far distance. Don't count the butterflies. Don't keep a mantra. Don't repeat a rhythm. Don't say, for instance, silly me, silly me, silly me repeatedly. Don't think there should be a standard name for what you're going through. Don't let your mindless errors conjure up in front of your eyes time and again. Don't daydream. Don't daydream of one day turning the table against Mallory. Don't think about the flip side of naivete or anything with the word flip. Don't think of the word transmission. If it's detrimental, don't. Don't confuse yourself by transparency, opacity, similarities, and differences. Don't say a word. Don't confuse yourself by polysyllabic, monosyllabic word distinction. Say neither for now. Don't nod your head. Don't try to learn new motor tasks. Don't imagine any sort of compassion. Don't think about the autumn, wind, and leaves or anything in that sense. Don't plug your ear. Don't say up and down and round and round. Don't think of enlargements of horizons all of a sudden. Don't think about a sea-facing balcony. Don't observe environmental catastrophes associated with climate change. Don't remember the article about medication approved for preventing vomiting due to motion sickness in dogs. Do acknowledge that you feel unwell. Do take anti-nausea pills. Do chew on a ginger. Do imagine an elephant. See how stable it is? Do think about small things like a photon. Think when you heard the photon for the first time. Do think about the electromagnetic radiations. Do bring to mind the word comfortable. Do imagine the ability of seeing through people, but only in straight line. Do think about tiny cotton balls. Do drink hot water if there is any in the car. Do hold up a bag close to your face. Do think about methods of vomit control, but in moderation. Do think about giving fresh water to birds. Do email Kenny back if and only if you get home. Say, I'm dying here. Do assimilate with decades of neoliberal thinking before you. Do say it louder. Prevent the cliche. Do reach out for help. Do consider neutral underpinnings of all issues. Do wish to serve in military. Do wish for security control measures. Do cancel the concert ticket for tomorrow as soon as you get home. Do go to West Africa on your 50th birthday. Do drink lemon tea again and again. Do avoid people who interpret all the texts philologically. Do take a 5-second break from doing anything I say. Do extend that 5 seconds to 10 more seconds. Do crave for more aroma of coffee. Do read the latest series of studies on this issue. Do ask the driver if they have proprioceptive dysfunction or just drive that way. Do tell me, what do you think about Rebecca? That was it. You've always thought one of the stupidest things people did was to transfer inappropriately. Your somatosensory input has gotten mixed up with something insignificant. Take Cronenberg's Fly, for instance. You remember that 1986 film. The scientist invented the instantaneous teleportation because he was getting car sick. He got mixed up with a fly inside one of the telepods. Fly hybrid Mr. Scientist could walk up and down and around a wall and ceiling. Motion sickness cured. The somatosensory input was altered. Sometimes death is only a symptom. And the footnote is, but if you get motion sickness, you're worse off being a fly.
Thank you very much. And
yeah, you're there.
Oh, we're kind of lost. I like very much a specific detail when you read the slashes and all those non-letter signs in the, well, I don't have the text now, and also the use of footnotes and all that are more specific to the written, to the visual page, and not to the oral reading, right? And I was thinking also that of the explanations about your poems, like you give a lot of importance to the paratext, all things that are in the margins, in the borders of the actual text. And how do you like working with that, and when you write it for a book, for example, for a reading, because there's a lot of a difference in that specific detail.
Sorry, you mean just what was it? Cautious to just include all the
the lines, and when you said, for example, a slash instead of skipping it, for example, or using the footnote, which is something specific of the written page, and not, we don't use it in the oral language every day.
Yes, yes. No, I meant it to be visual, exactly as you said, as well as you know, those slashes and formulas and sciences, or just possibilities for performance into the text. But also, it is important to see that text because, well, the idea is about seasickness and motion sickness, and the fact that the Persian language is written from right to left, and English is written from left to right. Just by reading this text, you get motion sick if you can read both languages. And then again, the fact that they're not translations to each other, and they okay. I know what to do now. So yeah, so it's not helping understanding this poem even if you know the language.
Yeah, hi, Aaron.
Hi, Ghazal. Thank you for that. I was listening to that poem, but still kind of listening to it through the prism of your first performance, which I thought was a really powerful kind of expose of the hierarchy of language and the hierarchy of a poetry reading public. And if anything, it kind of shows that like Orientalism is still very much alive in the Said sense, that we are absolved by this otherness of sound and language. But equally, I'm kind of fascinated in both cases, in the first piece and the second case, of this playing with tradition. Something that is presented as tradition, a poetry or a language that is presented as tradition, merits a certain sincere response, or a response of sincerity. And I think that has implications not just for the way that poetry is received, but also has implications for kind of social cultural interactions, politics, and so on. This kind of idea of tradition being sincere, which I think your poems, to my ear at least, really kind of unpack and unpick. And I don't know if that's an intentional thing or not. But then the flip side of that is that I'm kind of equally absorbed by the tradition. For example, in the first performance, the ritual and the kind of sincerity of presentation and performance completely absorbed me in a way that often poetry doesn't anymore. So I feel that there's like a really interesting tension there in your work, and I don't know if that's something that you consciously play with or not.
Well, I played with the idea that such a tradition might exist, because that tradition doesn't exist, that you know, breathe and then, you know, or maybe in there are certain people who do that, but this is not commonplace for you to just read a poem through these ceremonies. So the game was with this imagination, as you said, this Oriental imagination, that someone might read this text with the utmost respect and certain ritual, and believe in it so much. But it's not a new ritual. It's not a real ritual, what I did, I mean.
And what is a real ritual?
The real ritual of reading a poem in Persian?
Yes.
It's like more like this. You hold the book and you read it.
Yeah. without kissing or like
Not
fucking
really. No, no, no.
in love or masturbating. Yeah, because you talk a little bit about masturbation at the beginning. It's like that is why I feel that kind of connection between like sex, mystic, and science. How do you feel that? And in translation, I think that it's a kind of like a spaceship to go beyond the three dimension of existence in a way. Or maybe it's just like my impression of your work. I don't know. What do you you can tell us something about?
The question of I didn't maybe it existed, but I wasn't very aware of the text, and the fact that the text was about masturbation was that I really just found it really funny. Not only it's just wanted to read a funny text, but I also realized that the person, whoever printed it and put it in the newspaper stand, has put a fake ministry of culture. So it's so cute that somebody had this idea, really wanted to put it out, and then printed it in a book and is just selling it, and it's just and gives so many scientific facts about you know why translation masturbation is wrong, and that was a Freudian slip, wasn't it?
Master translation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Someone want to talk or asking to Ghazal or just say hello. You're still alive around the world, friends. Hortense, tu es là?
Oui, oui. J'ai pas une très. I don't have a good connection in my house, but it's okay now. Hello.
You're arriving from. Did you listen a little bit the poems? What do you think about that connection between sex, mysticism, and science?
I don't really understand who write this poem. A woman.
Ghazal?
You mean the second one? Yes, it wasn't very it didn't matter if it's written by a man or a woman. It was meant to be more a combination of self-help and magic text. Later in the text, there's like some magical elements and charts that mixes with the scientific formulas and the science text. So it's just text in between them. So the gender of the writer, if it doesn't come through, it really doesn't matter.
Okay, but because you speak about Sufism, and I believe it was an old text of.
Oh yes, the first performance. Yes.
Yeah, the first. Sorry. Yeah.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was about older texts. Well, it was they weren't real Sufis, but the names that I say, they were male. They're male writers.
And I want to ask you what is the statue of woman in poetry in Iran, in the history of Iran poetry. There is some famous woman, or it was man who was a writer?
Oh, the best answer to that, I think, Reese, are you still here? He's working on a Persian Sufi poet who's, are you there, Reese?
Yes. Yeah. Ghazal shared the website of Persian poetry, so I was interested to see this figure, Mahasti. Pardon. And I was very interested to note that there was a celebrated Persian female poet as well. So, and
Yeah.
Ghazal translated that for me.
Okay. But it was not forbidden for women to write before.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
Yeah. And there are lots of also contemporary Iranian poets, men and women writing. Yeah.
And Ghazal, oh, there's a piano. I don't know. I wanted to ask.
Felipe, I think Nia want to say something.
Yeah, please.
I wanted to ask about. I'm sorry that I missed the first reading. I had to be somewhere, but I wanted to ask about the seasick thing and these instructions that you're giving yourself or the reader, and whether you find this instructive voice, like don't do this, do this, stay totally focused on being upright and not seasick, whether that kind of had an effect on you over time, telling yourself not to be, to stay steady in the seasickness, whether that kind of had a powerful effect or not on you as a writer of it and reading it aloud.
Yeah, for seasick, because I get seasick, and I'm very bad in motion sickness in the car and everything, and I constantly tell myself that don't do that, don't do that, no, now breathe, now breathe, now breathe. And yes, this is the way I think when I'm getting sick in a bus or in a car, just constantly telling myself what to do.
So do you find those that now it's in a poem, does it have like a power, like, I just want, because it's such a strong instruction, imperative, what it does afterwards, after you've been seasick, like where do you go with that energy, like your inner voice, like instruction?
So it's, it's just.
What's the life of that inner voice after the poem is finished?
How it's just that part in the poem, because I think that's how it happens. Like you feel you're getting sick, you control yourself, you control, and then it's kind of you probably vomit, and then you have you don't have as much energy. So that's what I tried to do. So just do that, and then just quite a text.
Yeah. So what happens when you stop being in control then of the voice and the poem and the seasickness? Is this like a cathartic feeling that you're vomiting, or what happens next?
What happens next? Because these sections giving instructions how not to die from seasickness. So it goes to the next.
It just gets more and more severe.
Not necessarily. It gives just different approaches into like what is this disease and how you can control it, and then their parables, and then their stories and their formulas, and I think it jumps to something else. It doesn't completely perform as well as perhaps it should have. How it is to get sick and feel bad, and
Well, I don't think it has to. It's just it just had an interesting, really powerful effect on me. Maybe because I was walking around while I was listening to you, but it was like this steadying kind of voice. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I also wanted to ask you, it's always tricky when you're working with irony, jokes, humor, etc. in every poetry reading or literary reading. But I think it's even most complicated, or when, for example, when like in this conversation, when there are people from very different countries that our primary language is not English, and it's great to see how much different nuances or unintended jokes or jokes that are very well understood. How do you deal with that? For example, in the performance you prepare for today, how can you calculate like the degrees of irony and humor? Because I mean, it's always difficult, but I don't know. I have made performances of things that I thought were really funny with a friend musician. And when we finished, all people were very serious and very sad, and well, these kind of things happen, and it's great. And how do you prepare that degrees of irony and humor?
Yeah, it happens too. It's I am not in control of that. Yeah, just you think you're funny and it's not. Yeah. I think all of us have the experience of that. Worse is when you're not funny and people are laughing, but it happens also when you tell a joke and people don't react.
Yeah, you say something and you keep expecting and no one laughs.
Yes, that's awful. Yes.
Well, there's a little essay by an Irish poet that lives in the States, Mayred Byrne, which I really love. It's in UbuWeb, and it's called like Some Difference Between Poetry and Stand-Up. And she makes a parallel between the stand-up comedians and the poets. And it's really funny because it's a kind of similar situation, someone saying things to the public, but really different techniques and expectations. And lots of times when I've been reading, I'm thinking more, well, maybe I'm doing stand-up comedy and I haven't taken account.
We're in a better position though. I don't know if everyone agrees if we decide to be funny. Because we're not the stand-up comedians, it's okay if we're not. We're poets as well, so we can be. They haven't paid anything, so they don't deserve for us to make them laugh. If they get the laughter, it's a bonus.
Also, I would think I think that the kind of failure to acknowledge irony sometimes makes the piece or the performance a bit more powerful. And kind of exposes hierarchy and provides more of a satirical take on things. I mean, Ghazal, your piece for me reminded me strongly of my cousin lives in the rural way. If irony isn't, it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly. Oh, Felipe just got disconnected.
Yeah, I've returned.
Oh no, he's there.
Felipe.
So yes, I was saying that I like missing the eye even a bad thing. So should I perform?
Whatever you like.
Should we at the end?
Your choice.
At the end, yeah. We must stand with our irony, yeah. This is an ancient Welsh tradition now.
Which plan?
Awen.
Awen.
Diager wen.
Okay.
And what is that? What it mean? What it represents?
Awen.
Oh.
It represents divine inspiration. I've got it tattooed, ironically, on my knuckles.
Mm. Like it like for like runes, you know, like in Sumerian
Yeah.
writing.
It's called Coilbren. It's a bardic alphabet. But anyway, I must praise Ghazal's great beauty now. Dwy bleth, double merch, gwbl o gamp.
برو بالا.
Awen,
برو بالا.
Bwystfil,
برو بالا.
Bwystfil,
برو
Dilwgr.
بالا. برو بالا. برو بالا. برو بالا.
Llifoedd, 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 Bwystfil.
برو بالا.
Bwystfil, Cariadus, Awenus,
کریه 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 کریه.
Cerig.
خیلی کریه. خیلی کریه.
Na cariad a cusan.
نه خیلی کریه. خیلی کریه.
Na deml erw, nac awen.
نگو نگو نگو. خیلی کریه. خیلی کریه.
Nag wy yn nabod chdi.
نبود که نبود.
Nag wy yn gwybod pwy wyt ti.
نگو نبود 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 نگو.
Na dyfyr, na gares, na dogen, na dwyn. Nagw, nagw.
نگویی نگو نگفتیم نگفتی.
Dyn ab lamp. Wywbleth, dwybleth.
دین نداره همه چیز میگه نگو 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 نگو.
Na dyn.
نگو نگو نگو
Na dwybleth.
نه
Na
دین
soffl.
نگو ندین نگو 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 نگو
Na
ندین.
cribiaid, na crwydr, na eilawb, na benfrig byn.
همین فردا میرم.
Mirain. Yn torri bysedd.
فردا میرم. همین فردا میرم. همین فردا میرم. همین فردا میرم. همین فردا
Dwi dy garu di. Dan Mirain, dan Awen, dan Llwyr, dan Llair.
Since when? نمیرم 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 نمیرم.
Dan Rew, in ice.
نمیرم نمیرم نمیرم. Since when? نمیرم.
Paper roses, the curf.
نمیرم.
Scuff.
نگفت.
Dan soffl, sagl, lingual, labial, certain number, violent.
نمیرم نمیرم نمیرم.
Violed.
نمیرم.
A gwirionedd. The truth.
نمیرم.
Naci, a truth.
The truth is nice. نمیرم نمیرم از فردا.
Na dwybleth, the truth. Na dogen, a truth. Na digin, sample, a truth.
کری.
Cerig.
کری.
Cariad.
کری.
Ceris.
کریه.
Corwynt.
کریه 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 کریه.
Crwyr.
کریه.
Cariad.
کریه.
Yeah, I think we were just doing what Aaron was talking about, just making up a sea shanty, which in fact consisted of me reciting love poetry to Ghazal, and Ghazal was saying, gross, this is gross. Is that correct?
The karih, yeah, karih means gross. I just picked up the word, something like karih in his poem, and I kept repeating it's karih, it's gross.
And in Welsh, cari means love, you know, and ceirios, and which is cherries, and also corwynt, which is whirlwind. So we're just we're playing in the field of our mutual ignorance at each other's languages here. So it's a work in progress. Yeah. So yeah,
nice.
we had the luxury of this position that we both the connection between Welsh and Persian is like non-existent. So there's a lot of area for playing.
Yeah, there is not like interruption or contamination of meaning, just like no meaning in a way, no, like just texture or.
Yeah, and then there's some sort of embodied gestural meaning.
Yeah, embodied.
Which is misinterpreted, yeah.
Significance, something like that, yeah. That's what the idea of like reading with the body in a way, no? Like putting, like when you're kissing the book and you're like putting the book over your head. Or like I remember Andres Ambanto in a moment when some years ago he slept with some books over his front to read during he was sleeping, like a box tatuada of Díaz Casanova, and something like that. You know, what kind of, how we can like read or write during the dream time or the sleeping time. I don't know, Andres, maybe you can remember that kind of moment. or Aaron McCutler, what nice to meet you again. Friends.
Should I unmute people? I can. Or I
go.
Make Felipe a host because I don't know how to be a host. Felipe, how can I make you host again?
You have to, in the list of participants.
I'm there.
Yeah, you have to put a double click in my name where it says more, I think. Well, Andres. Andres, would you like to comment what Martin was asking?
I was actually thinking about the first word that Rhys mentioned. What was it?
Awen.
Awen. And I was thinking about the word newen, which is again from a very unrelated language, both to Persian and Gaelic, which is means force or like vital force. Newen.
Newen.
Yeah.
Can you write it?
I think that there's a lot of discussion, but people would write it like this. It's that's the language, Mabzungun.
And it's beautiful. It's like two, like the same sign. It's like I don't know, Cassiopeia constellation in the sky. Like you have like backwards or upwards. Like the beginning of language, you know, that theory is like the first letters is what like a kind of corners of version of the receiving, the reception to the scripture. You know, that movement of like translation and projection. And that is really, really beautiful. How can you translate that in human language or like or no in human language in extraterrestrial? How can you send that? Stars in the world. Or just like tattoos on your skin. There's some silence in the voice. Sorry, Andres, question to raise the bar is open. You can speak freely, just like Aaron, I need to hear your voice. Like it's like 10 years. Please talk the last time that I saw you was like in a street, taking pictures of that Can you make louder your voice? I hear you really like.
Who, me?
No, I don't.
I can only hear an organ music playing. Not turning it to instruments.
Get there.
Can't hear you.
Can I hear you again? Your voice, Aidan? Please.
Yeah. You were talking away, and I don't know if everyone else was the same, but you were making all the gestures, and all we could hear was organ music, you know. No, I did want to come in and say, because I really enjoyed that last piece with Reese and Ghazal, and it reminded me of, I don't know if you know of a piece by Anne Tardos called The Cat Licked the Garlic. Know that? It's written in 4 different languages. I think English, French, Hungarian, and I'm not sure.
Can you send to us, please?
But in the Anne Tardos piece, when you read it, when you read it and listen to the reading rather than try and translate it, the other languages are made to sound a bit like English. In other words, on the paper they look like an untranslatable. If you can't speak the language, it's untranslatable. But if you stop trying to translate it, sonic. Could shout, but I can't hear.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
When I was listening to you both, I started
something maybe you didn't mean it to sound like, you know, and then you start putting together a narrative. And then as soon as one word of English is propped in, it changes the direction of the narrative, because that's the one that you start to cling to as you move forward. But the Antardos one does that brilliantly. If you don't know it, I came across it. I can't remember. Somebody at Birkbeck was teaching, and had it on the course. But that reminded me of that, and just how we desperately translate things anyway. If you take away, the more you take away our ability to understand, the more we somehow instinctively try to understand, and then in some ways that I find how thinking of how that works, even whenever you do understand a poem, how you change it for yourself, you know, as you move into it. So, yeah, I really enjoyed that.
We lost your voice sometimes. Sometimes we listen, we discover, but anyway, I think we can accept that kind of no understanding, nothing at all. But about the question, or just like understanding some little words in Gaelic or in Chilean, I don't know. But just like meaning is a kind of like a secondary arm, I think, for poetry, and I don't know, like at least for me, that the thing that I really prefer is the thing that I don't understand. But I cannot translate what did you say. I don't. But I was completely no. I don't know if Ghazal, did you understand? Or...
Yeah, I did. I did. Yeah, it repeat. Oh, that's echo is. But I think what you're saying is, if I understood it right, is that occasional English that you could hear in the performance is just something just to hang on a little, and it goes. And what would happen if even that little English wasn't there? You still would try to make sense of the sounds you hear, and perhaps maybe to translate it, translate the sound into your own language, just perhaps to understand something. But I think what Reese and I were doing was also kind of homophonically translating these words to each other to try to make sense of it. So the word that I heard from his performance was caddy, which means gross. So I just went with it, repeating it's caddy. It's super caddy. It's really, really caddy. It's so gross, too gross, very gross.
Yeah, similar to that, what I meant is with the Tardos text, when it's read out loud and you're not reading it off the page, what you hear starts, even the words which are in French or in Hungarian, etc., you actually start to hear them as English words.
Yeah.
And it actually does that on purpose to play with the mind and the work, and the text also includes portrait photos of herself, I think, and with different kinds of backgrounds and things, and you know, so yeah, I think it just makes you aware more of what it means to translate, that you're always translating. You know, we're always translating. I'm translating now from myself to try and say what I'm thinking. But there was another thing came up during your first performance where you were talking about the emphasis you were putting on certain words, and then as you were doing it, I came in late to it, so I wasn't aware that you were trying to do a send up or a be satirical or whatever. But at the same time, when you were doing that, it seemed to me that it was being a bit satirical, and it started to remind me then of I went to took the kids to a musical, and at either side of the hall there were two people doing sign language for part of the crowd, but they both did it in quite different ways. So I ended up missing what was happening on the stage and just watching these two people, how they sort of got into a sort of a battle with each other as to how they could translate, because it's a musical, so they're translating the music as well. And it was a fascinating thing to watch. But you know, how do you translate with the body something which is not a language in the first place, and you're using your body to translate it into a language in a way, you know? So it just to sort of seemed to me the extension of some of the things you were playing with when you work with that. I think it's really really enjoyed it. So thank you for that.
Yes, I think Martin was also saying the same thing, that how you do the how you translate with the body and gesture in the beginning.
Yeah,
I think that is an interesting idea to think about and to pay attention more as we're just writing and translating, that where body locates, where is our body and the role of our body when we think about the idea of translation, which is transformation itself.
Yeah.
Is that you, the music? No? Who's that? Martin.
I was playing the piano on top of it, but yeah.
Spaceship sound.
Who's doing it?
Martin's doing it.
Is he?
I think so. He's like, it's so either you or him, everyone else.
Who's got the most guilty face?
You both look guilty.
It's Reese. I'm sure of it.
You begin to look like Take That there, though, Reese, at one point. It was getting dodgy.
I've only got the piano here.
Making a poetry, they connected a star, and they like proposed to that star to be connected forever with that star. And then they wrote a really wonderful book of magic poetry. It's called Picatrix, in the 10th century Picatrix, and that book is really like talk about that moment with the poet connected with a star. And he promised to that star to be connected forever and receive, just might that connection. And I think that it's really important to connect that with the body, because, you know, Paracelsus, taking that whole idea of the connection between body that stars, he makes surgery in the night, like because he said that the most essential thing in our body is like inside, indeed, our skin, and he opened the bodies and he connect that disease with the stars, and he found the healing of that, the pharmacon. And I think that now, you know, with all the virus and that kind of thing, we forgot the old remedies that poets, the philosopher poets, Pythagorean poets, proposed to the civilizations to heal from some disease. You know, in the pandemic of Athens, when Pericles died, you know, the Pericles of democracy died, in that kind of the first historian guide to Thucydides talk about that. You know, they called the poet to found what kind of herb we have to burn in the middle of the city to like purify, I know, the ambience, or transform the invisible disease into songs or sounds. Yeah, I don't know what
I think you all should join this music and read something. And
let's do it.
Yeah. The book.
Open your heart.
Visible. شتاب زدگی
Insecure.
زاویه 0 8 9 2 3
Avo.
0 9 8 2 3 زنگ زدم نبودید 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 نبودید زنگ
Kawan. Kawan ak awan. Roiter ak awan. Roiter ak
گفتم به شرفم قسم به شرفم قسم به شرفم قسم به شرفم قسم به شرفم قسم
Open your mic, open your heart, open your mind, open your head, open your soul, open your ground. Carlos Sotoromán. Now, let's go. Go on.
Three of them.
Sin impuesto, ese es el votando claramente un tema para el
Why?
en la sala luego que se haya aprobado esa reforma constitucional que por primera vez en 40 años.
دوشین شبم بود شبیه یزدا آن مونس غمگسار نامد
Open future.
شب دور می صفتم می گفتم رب لا تذرنی فردا شب تا به سحر زدید دور می صفتم می گفتم رب لا تذرنی فردا
دور می‌صفتم Eyes.
95 votos a favor, entonces se aprueba la Cámara de Diputados elegidos del 10% de fondos de las AFP. Está votando.
I said eyes.
Un tema que para el gobierno dure golpe y ahí vamos a escucharlo.
Limit.
En 40 años.
Open night.
Doing characters, did you? That can't be characters because the other person saying.
نمیروم. نمیروم. میگن برو. Then why? نمیروم. But why?
This way, folks. I know where we are now. We should have turned left. Yeah, it's not that far.
Perdone la
درصد مقابل من نشستن تحصیل تبارات انزیر کلمات باحال همیشه چیزایی مثل یکی که طاقت روی هم شب اینجا نشسته یکم داره بودن متأثر کنه نه چون بگیم میابرد همین که رده بودن او تنها کسی که رو باید از کافی سپاری دستش رو باید
Perdone la palabra, perdone la palabra, perdone la palabra, perdone la palabra, perdone la palabra.
محکوم کنم بلد جارش رو میآید به یاد شوهای دیگر برمی‌دارد که بردارد که برمی‌دارد شکم در شروع می‌کند 3 بار در دقیقه آروم می‌زند به همون متانت به همون احترام که هست.
Non. J'ai pas l'impression d'être devant un gars qui est sur terre. Non.
Significa un duro.
The invention of the radio.
Sicherheit ja auch ein Ort, nicht nur der Musik, sondern auch der Begegnung und der Veranstaltung. Was finden Sie wichtig, um diesen Ort zu gestalten?
This is the most used game of the world. I was asking what age Gaga might have been when she left Valley.
من فکر میکردم دوباره از اول 3 بار همینجا گیر کرده بود.
Iscari, lighting on grassy, violent consonants, cash in the Anglosphere. Cleansing and dial, sempre cameras, merfonish, analog, in sebon, clean and wielding.
همینجا گیر کرده بود همینجا سه بار همینجا گیر کرده بود. همینجا گیر سه بار همینجا گیر کرده بود. سه بار همینجا گیر کرده بود.
Egur lan sinobl sebon.
Sebor. سه بار همینجا گیر کرده بود. سه بار.
Dwf, dyfr, dwf, diagar, drych, drif, dloeslais, dwy, da, dyfr, da, dogan, dwyn, dwbl, difyr, digan, delw, disemol, dilys, delw, desl, dwyres, da, diamau, demo, dwy, diflagydd, dwy sgwbl, dyfr, dwf, diagar, drych, drif, dloeslais, dwy, da, dwy, da, dwy, da, dwy, da.
توی تنها توی تنها توی تنها تنها توی آشپزخانه را تمیز نمی کنی. تنها توی تنها تنها تنها
Towards Tymer, Tymhestl, towards dwy, tum hestl, tumer, tu, dwy, tywod, tum hestl, tu, dwy, tywod, tum hestl, dwy, tu, tymor, tum hestl, dwy, twy, tu, tum hestl, drych, tum hestl.
دربار رو تمیز نمی کنی تویی که دربار رو تمیز نمی کنی من نیستم توی من نیستم توی ظرفا رو تمیز نمی کنی توی من نیستم توی تنها توی
This is what happened. This is what happened.
توی
Says, oh God, no. Says, no. Says, oh dear God. Says, turn on your air pack. Says, turn on your air. Says, can breathe.
Et sa vibration
Says, choking.
est la plus proche de la vibration
Says, lift up your
de la
voice.
chose elle-même.
Says, it's hot. Says, I
La vibration
can't.
est mise par le son d'un mot
Says, don't tell me.
est la plus proche de la vibration de l'objet
God.
même.
Says, do it. Says, now. Says, I told him. Says, I told him. Says, timid. Says, don't. Says, take it easy. Says, move. Says, don't let me like this. Says, not now. Says, not here. Says, you are. Says, no. Says, I. Says, I am. Says, passing. Says, out. Says, we're not dead yet. Says, if you ever wanted. Says, me a miracle. Says, she is. Says, she is. Says, there. Says, can breathe. Says, Jesus Christ. Says, no. Says, she's out. Says, lucky. Says, God. Says, the water. Says, we're dead. Says, goodbye. Says, I love you. Says, lie down. Says, green pastures. Says, fear no evil. Says, we'll dwell in the house. Says, none. Says, none. Says, none. Says, none. Says, static. Says, silence.
Sinistro.
Have 1 minute before Felipe got the communication, no? 5.
Just 1 minute to say whatever you want to say.
Okay.
That was a beautiful communication, I guess. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Ghazal.
Thank you, Ghazal. It was great knowing more of your work. It's great to see these feasts. Today is a very important day in Chilean politics. Also, I was showing some images from the Congress, and one of
What happened?
They approved that you can take 10% of your ¿cómo se dice?
Pension fund.
De la AFP, ¿cómo se dice? Of your money from the retirement.
Your
pension fund.
Yeah. I'm not sure if it will work okay or not. In fact, maybe it won't be approved in the Senate, but politically it's very important that it happened today. So. Well, thank you very much, and let's see us next week in the same channel at the same hour. Goodbye all. Thanks, Ghazal.
Thank you, Ghazal.
Bye-bye. Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Martin.
Bye, folks.
Felipe.
Bye, Ghazal.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
And please send us links where we can read
See you next Wednesday,
thing.
friends.
Yes.
Open bar next Wednesday, 10 to midnight. Thank you, Georg. Thank you, Ghazal. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Derek.